What's up, Tiger fans? Welcome back to another episode of Tiger Talk TV. I am the Corey C. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single upcoming episode. You can find us on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So follow the show and tell every Tiger that you know. And remember, when you support Tiger Talk TV, it all helps the cause, which is the I love Jackson State University. And it is Soul Bowl week. This game needs no introduction. This guest needs no introduction. He is the voice of Alcorn State Athletics, the legendary Charles Edmond. Welcome to Tiger Talk TV.
Man, I feel special, man, to be on this program. I'm feeling pretty good. I appreciate it.
As you should. You're the man. You're the man. So we're glad. We're honored to have you on the show. Obviously, the big game every year. It used to be the Capital City Classic. Went back and forth between the Capital City Classic and the Soul Bowl, but it's back in Jackson this year. And we want to talk about this Alcorn State Braves team. So first and foremost, how are you? How are things going?
Man, it's been a busy week. Basketball is underway, and so I've been in Baton Rouge twice and kind of wind up football. And didn't turn out the way that we expect, but we can end this thing on a pretty good winning streak. And who knows? I mean, you guys try to lock up the Eastern Division, and there's some work to do left.
Absolutely. You mentioned basketball. Alcorn is looking good early. They kind of put it to LSU for a while there, kept it close with the first-year coach. So just tell us just a little bit about this Alcorn State team under this new head coach.
Yeah, Jake Morton, he was a longtime assistant at Florida State, and he's a really good dude. When you just talk to him behind the scenes, he's got a really good staff, and we played well in spots in just about every game this year. But when it comes to the interior, we're just overmatched in a lot of these games. And that's what happened against LSU. And, of course, they got to the free throw line. We lost by 26, and they made 26 more free throws than we did. They made 31. We made 5. And you know how that works when you're playing out of conference. They're going to get to the line a lot more. And so we got to get right on that as we get ready for conference. And, Coach Morton learning the SWAC and learning how things go in this non-conference. He's not used to it. He was a long-time assistant at Florida State under Leonard Hamilton, where they had a great deal of success in the ACC as well as out of conference. So this is new for him, but he's not feeling any pressure. He just wants to get better day by day. And come January, when we open up against Jackson State in Jackson, he wants to be ready. And I think he's well on his way.
Looking forward to conference play. There's been several teams who've been very competitive in out-of-conference play and even gotten some wins. So should be a fun season. But first things first, let's get to it, man. This football game coming up. Alcorn sits at 5-6 on the season overall, 4-3 in SWAC play. And they were voted second in the West in the preseason. And that's exactly where they sit heading into the Capital City Classic. How would you say the season has played out relative to the internal expectations as well as the fan expectations?
Well, the fan expectation is to be playing for the SWAC championship. That's the fan expectation. But the reality is that we got off to such a slow start with a first-year quarterback. And I think that, we lost 4 games by a total of 20 points, a play here, play there. But starting with the Florida A&M game in mid-October, that's the game in which I think our offense got it going. And really our quarterback, Jalen Tolbert, figured out that he can make plays with his feet, with his legs. Teams were stacking the box and daring him to run the football. He wouldn't do it. But against FAMU, even though we lost that game, he was able to do that. And since that Florida A&M game, he's had over 200 yards rushing. And I think defensively that has made the defense adjust to Jalen Tolbert. And Tolbert's done a really nice job. So I think the expectation, obviously, was to win the division with a new quarterback, our defense, and Cedric Thomas being a former DC, and hit one of the guys that he trained, and Deion Roberson, elevating him to DC. It's all just kind of coming together right now. Is it late? Yes. We've had some very troubling losses early. I wish we can have a redo, especially the FAMU game, the Prairie View game, in which we had a chance at a winning field goal. We make a couple of plays. We make 4 plays. We're probably, playing for the Western Division, but that's not the case. We're playing well right now, and you want to finish it off with a win against your number 1 rival in JSU.
You mentioned that FAMU game. It seems like it was the turning point of the season, and the Braves are coming to the vet with a 4-game winning streak with a 17.5-point average margin of victory after that 5-point loss to FAMU, and then a 1-point loss to Prairie View. You mentioned them as well. They're the Western Division champions. So the Braves seem to be at least competitive. Although it's the end of the season, and you kind of allude to this, would you say that this team is peaking right now?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it in all phases. Offensively, with Jalen Tolbert, it starts with him. Our offensive line has done a terrific job. Our running game has been always there, with Ja'Cory Sewell and Reggie Davis and Jalen Tolbert hitting his receivers, spraying it around. So we're doing a good job there defensively, getting after the quarterback. We didn't have a sack for the first 5 games of this season. We didn't have one sack, and that was an issue. Mm-hmm. But we've been able to get to the quarterback. We didn't allow a touchdown against Grambling. They scored their touchdown on a scoop and score on our turnover. So defensively, we've done a much better job. It's just all coming together at this point. Is it late? Yes. Could it be better? Yes. But at least for Braves fans, something to feel good about going into the last game here. And look, it's going to be tough playing a Jackson State team, as you know, that's playing for the Eastern Division title. They win this game, they win the East. Alabama State, they're playing at noon. This game is at 2:30. So by the time we kick it off, we'll know exactly what you guys got going there as far as the Eastern Division. But as far as Alcorn is concerned, we had Prairie View. We just didn't get it done. We had Northwestern State, just didn't get it done. Mm-hmm. So it's a shaky start to the season. As Cedric Thomas has said, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Okay. And so if we finish this season strong, I think Braves fans will be really, really happy going forward.
What has the winning streak done for the team's morale and confidence? Is it noticeable?
Yes, absolutely. I was at practice on Wednesday, and you could tell the energy. You could just tell it was a different vibe, a different feel. During the season, times in which you can hear a pin drop at practice. Just kind of, not saying going through the motions, probably was a level of focus and attention to detail. But the practice I went to midweek was spirited, enthusiastic, energetic. And you can understand it's Jackson State week. And, I've seen a lot of these practices the week of JSU, and it's just a totally different vibe. And I know, and we all know what this game is about. Regardless of records, what's at stake. It's been a lot of fussing on social media, a lot of talk back on social media. Some of it healthy, some of it not. I will say that. Some of it's just not healthy. And just as a person who's a graduate of a SWAC school, and I don't like some of the vitriol that's going on, the back and forth, but it is what it is. You're not going to be able to stop that. Just enjoy the football game. And I think, the energy from Alcorn's perspective, from the players' perspective, has been focused but enthusiastic. It's good to be winning. It's tough when you're not winning, especially this time of year.
Yeah. I mentioned the 4-3 SWAC record and the several close losses, and you talked about them being right there at the end, and several games of just not being able to get it done. What are some of the things that you say have been the difference between Alcorn being 4-3 right now in the SWAC and let's say 6-1 or so?
It's just a matter of just making a play, getting a stop. In the Florida A&M game, we had the football 4th and 2 at our own 33-yard line with 3 timeouts and 5 minutes left in the game. And Cedric Thomas opted to go for it, didn't get it, gave FAMU a short field, and they scored on that. Now, if we punt, you never know what would have happened, but you punt the football, punt them in the hole. We got 3 timeouts. We stop them. We get better field position. We have a chance possibly to win that game. And so I think, that decision there for one. And I just think, the difference early in the season was just figuring out Jalen Tolbert and just trying to get him acclimated into this run-heavy offense where he could run the football, where he didn't at times early in the season. But he figured it out. And I think since that point, we've been playing some really good football. And I would say meaningful football, because you've got teams, Texas Southern, for example, they were on a 4-game winning streak. They were in the Western Division race. We went down to Houston and knocked them out of the race. Last week, Grambling still had a shot. Even though Prairie View locked it up by winning last week, Grambling was still right there. We knocked them off and ending their winning streak. And now you got Jackson State on a 3-game winning streak. So we've knocked 2 teams kind of out of the race, and we've kind of ended winning streaks. So I think our confidence right now is high. We're just playing total team football, playing good complementary football. All the things we were hoping for in August is coming to fruition here in November.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about Coach Thomas and the job he's done in his second year on the reservation, as head coach at least, and how he's kept everything afloat, especially after it looking kind of rocky from the start, at least on the outside looking in.
Yeah, right now, I think fans are kind of starting to get back on board. You know how fans are. Some are going to be behind the purple and gold no matter what. But there are some fair weather fans out there that when we're losing games early in the season, they were wondering about Coach Thomas. But Cedric Thomas never wavered. He felt like this team would get it going. Making some adjustments offensively, schematically, that has helped obviously in this streak. But in talking with Cedric Thomas at least twice a week during the course of the season, it hits him hard because he's Alcorn true, and he wants to win no matter what the circumstance. Nobody wants to win Braves football better than the head coach. Mm-hmm. And so, he's taking those losses hard. And he, this week, very business-like approach. It's the last game of the regular season, and just keeping it the same way. I just think that he has learned just to have you make adjustments on the fly, and he's doing that. He's done that, and he's kind of settled in really nicely these last 4 weeks. And so I think when you take a look at it, I think the level of focus for this game, because last year was a dud. I mean, if you just look at the game at Spinks last year, no one expected that outcome in terms of just, the domination. At least Braves fans didn't. And because it was senior day and all that, and we just didn't expect that. And he's referenced that 48-10. He referenced that this week. It's been on the board this week. Mm-hmm. So players know, coaches know, Cedric Thomas knows that, you want a different outcome. You want a different effort, a different level of energy for this particular game.
The offense is averaging 31 points a game versus SWAC opponents. Let's go back to the quarterback, Jalen Tolbert, the Howard transfer. He's closing in on 2,000 yards passing this season, 13 touchdowns with 7 interceptions and a 64% completion percentage, which you talked about him as a runner. What does he bring to the offense? How different is the offense when he adds that dynamic as a dual threat and be able to do so much on the ground?
It's a totally different offense. It's a totally different offense. If you look at the offense early in the season with Northwestern State, with Alabama A&M, with UAPB and Prairie View, they were daring him to run the football, but he just wouldn't do it. And if he had just done it 5 times a game in those 4 games, make some big plays, I think we would have won a couple of those games. So by him realizing what he can do with his feet, and even against Grambling, I think there were times in which he made plays with his feet, creating separation and making some key throws against Grambling last week. It really showed. So if Jalen Tolbert sees that and if he takes advantage of it, then the Braves are much better for it. Now, Jackson State's a stingy defense now. There's no doubt about it. Those looks might not be there, so he's going to have to figure out another way. But I think Jalen Tolbert has to be aware of the fact that those opportunities could be there, and he's got to take advantage of it. But it's just been a totally different Jalen Tolbert the last 7 weeks of this season compared to the first 4 or 5 to start the season.
Yeah. So he really makes it a 3-headed monster in the backfield, because I know the Braves lean heavily on a rushing attack that averages 181 yards per game, but that's led by the running backs, and you've mentioned them already, Jacorian Sewell and Reggie Davis. Let's start with the preseason first-teamer, Jacorian. I always say Jacobian, right? The preseason first-teamer. He's easily the Braves' best offensive weapon, in my opinion. One of the top rushers in the league. 760 on the ground. And it looks like he's been dealing with the leg injury, though, that he sustained against Texas Southern, I want to say. And he missed part of the Southern game, but he was back on the field last week versus Grambling, but only in a reserve role, about 8 carries. So talk about his status first and foremost and how different the team is with him versus without him.
Well, he was limited last week against Grambling. He didn't play against Southern University. They held him out for precautionary reasons. And really, against Grambling, you could tell that he was laboring just a little bit, just trying to get back. But he's going to play today. This is his last ride. This is his last game. And when you have that 2-headed monster with Reggie Davis and Jacorian Sewell, and they're both going, and then you add Jalen Tolbert to that dynamic, I think that makes this Braves running attack dangerous. When you talk about Alcorn football, whether it's been in the 90s or with the late Steve McNair, we've been able to run the football. And so when you have that 2-headed dynamic, that makes it good. When you have a 3-headed dynamic with Jalen Tolbert, it makes it even better. But with Jacorian Sewell, I'm sure that he's gonna get some carries. I don't know if he's gonna get the bulk of the carries. He's still trying to deal with that injury. So I don't know if they're just going to just put it in his belly 25 times. I don't think that'll be the case. But I think Jacorian Sewell will help us in some shape, form, or fashion. I think Reggie Davis will probably be the bell cow, and he has been the bell cow the last several weeks, and he's had some really big runs. He's gotten in the end zone, and that just helps the running game.
Yeah. And talk about Davis as he steps in for Ja'Cory, and he's quietly put up some big numbers for the Braves: 719 yards, 9 TDs, coming from UT Chattanooga, and he had 850 yards rushing for them last season. So he can definitely get it done. 6 yards a carry on the ground. What type of back is he, and what are the similarities and differences between him and Ja'Cory?
Well, I think Jacorian Sewell is kind of the big back, medium yards back. And then he did have a touchdown against Grambling. But Reggie Davis has been our short yardage guy, third and short, fourth and one from the one. He's been able to pound it in there. And, I interviewed him early in the year, just very thankful for the opportunity. He was really emotional, just the fact that when we played Alabama A&M, his family got a chance to see him play for the first time in person. And he was really emotional about that. I mean, he's from Montgomery, Alabama, but his folks had never really seen him play in person until we played in Huntsville. And he just started to tear up. And I'm like, well, did I say something wrong? No, it was just the fact that he was just so happy for the opportunity and to be in this great game. So I think he wants to go out with a bang here. And so it's a good compliment between him and Jacorian Sewell. And I think if both of those guys are going, this Braves offense is really a tough cookie to stop.
Charles, when I look at the SWAC receiving yards leaders list, I have to scroll all the way down to 20 before I see an Alcorn Brave, Jacoby Matthews, and then Jarvis Rush at 23. Talk about that wide receiver room and their role in the offense.
Well, Jarvis Rush has been dynamic all year long. I mean, against Grambling, Jarvis Rush came up with a couple of huge catches. As Grambling, they were the second-ranked defense in the conference, and they got pressure on Jalen Tolbert, and Jalen Tolbert found Jarvis Rush in some tight windows, and he made some dynamic catches to keep drives alive, and that was one of the differences in the game. So Jarvis Rush, another veteran, another guy, and of course we're run first, but what Jalen Tolbert has done with his arm has been something special. It was something we kind of struggled with last year in throwing the football, but Jalen Tolbert, Jarvis Rush. And then you look at Jacoby Matthews, who's going to be back there on punt and kickoff returns. Jacoby Matthews had a 79-yard punt return against Florida A&M. So he can give you some good field position too. But it's a pretty good 1-2 punch. And then you add Tyron Warren in there. So that's a pretty good three-headed dynamic as far as the receiving core is concerned.
You alluded to the O-line earlier. How has it been overall this season? On paper, I see they've given up 16 sacks, which is right around the middle of the pack in the SWAC. Ronald Brown was a first-team preseason All-SWAC selection. Have they been steady for the most part, or a concern at times?
Early in the season, it was a level of concern. I think we hit rock bottom in the Florida A&M game where we just got whooped up front on both sides of the ball. But I think here in this streak, starting with Florida A&M, they were challenged after that game. And Tremaine Watson, who's, a terrific offensive line coach, a bright star, a young star in that offensive line group as far as the coach there in that position. They were really challenged from that Florida A&M game going forward. And that offensive line has really been stout. Of course, when you can run the football the way we have, when you can protect Jalen Tolbert the way that they have, that means the offensive line is getting it done. And, now last week we had some false start penalties. We had, I think, 5 in the third quarter. We had a chance to put that Grambling game away, and we kind of let Grambling hang around by taking ourselves off the field by some pre-snap penalties. And so we're going to have to deal with that on Saturday because Jackson State's going to come after it, and we've got to be able to be disciplined up front. But the offensive line has been solid, has been stout. We had 19 guys in camp. And so now, obviously that's been whittled down some, but we've got a really solid offensive line group, and we just hope they can give us one more solid effort here.
Coming up next, part 2. Check the description for the link. If you enjoy our content and appreciate what we do, kindly consider donating to the channel.